You
It's
know,
not in all cultures.
some words are just unique to our culture here in the West.
Well, you know
we,
something. It's in our culture, so we're gonna use it. Yeah, yeah, we have to come. So what's up?
so
What do you have in store for us today? Learning styles. I did not get a chance to see the charts you sent. 17 charts. I love the charts. So you're gonna have to walk us through it and let us know exactly what you're hoping for the listeners to take away today. Because when we make our presentation, we're hoping the listeners will take away something, some
Oh,
story.
yes, they always get empowered. And here's the thing about the seeds that I plant. Sometimes they don't grow right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it takes a little time for it to germinate, and then they'll be in a situation where they'll hear something or see something, and it'll resonate back to that seed that was planted here on the higher frequency. So I'm
Absolutely.
not worried about it.
Okay. All right. So, before we get into this, anything generally in the news you want to make a quick reference on, and then we get into it? Something to learn because we learn from all these experiences every day.
Well, I didn't really want to talk too much about what's going on because it's everywhere. We can't turn on any type of media now without hearing the two top stories, which have to do with race. You know, we have the one with the NAACP
Mm-hmm.
woman who
Rachel
I guess you can say she disguised herself. Rachel
Rachel
disguised
Dolezal.
herself.
Ra-
I
Rachel
couldn't
Dolezal.
pronounce the last name.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Dolezal.
So is that.
Mm-hmm.
So she disguised herself as a black woman because when you look at the hair weave and stuff, she did a pretty good job actually.
Mm-hmm.
But my thing about that is that, you know, back in the day, that wasn't a grievous offense. You could not pass for white without being murdered. You know, they would kill you,
Yeah.
sometimes on spot, on site.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, people that know any historical information about the U.S., back in the day, in the height, I would say, of slavery, there were quite a few children who were born to the slave masters that could pass for white.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, some of them left and did, but what happens is the genes don't lie.
Mm-hmm.
So what you see on the surface wasn't necessarily what was being born. So you
Right.
had occasions where women were being stomped out and murdered, you know, because they would marry claiming to be white and then, you know, giving birth to black children. So, you know, it was really an grievous offense. The same with men. You could not go and try and pass for white. You know, you had people like Lena Horne who could pass for white, but she was black.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so that this is nothing new, but it's new because she reversed it.
Yeah.
She disguised herself as someone black, you know, but why wouldn't you want to be black? You know, everything comes from us anyway. So I'm not mad at her. I'm just mad that she lied.
Yeah, and that was one of the things, you know, Mr. Lindsay and I had a discussion, and that's one of the things I said, why lie? Why not just tell it as it is? But
Yeah, say
I
I
think,
wish I was black. I mean, everybody can wish to be something. There's nothing wrong with that. But, you
look,
know,
look how,
clearly she could hold the position because she did. And clearly she enjoyed it. And
right.
she had, you know, a deep passion for it. And she was very capable. But she lied. And
Yeah.
because she did that one thing,
Yep.
it negates
Backfired.
everything that she did.
Yeah, look when Bruce Jenner never lied. Bruce Jenner said, I want to be a woman. and,
Yeah.
and he's out there changing sex. But yeah, and I appreciate that input and thought there. And the other thing, can't take 30 seconds, you don't have to delve into it much. The young man who murdered the 9 blacks over there.
Woo, ruler.
Just say something, man. Just say something. It's in the news.
Again, nothing new because we've been going through this, and I'm going to say two things about it. The first thing I want to say is that I like what the president said.
Mm-hmm.
His response is something that I have always felt and I have seen and I was taught.
Mm-hmm.
We over here in the U.S. do things completely differently.
Yeah.
And it is now that we are seeing the results of all of our, you know, centuries of bad living.
Yeah, I understand.
You know what I'm saying? And he says it. This doesn't really happen anywhere else in the world.
Exactly.
But nowhere else in the world do they not care for their people. We here in the U.S., Put money before everything. Money before souls, money before family, money before everything. Health, everything. So that, you know what I'm saying? So we have a pattern of destruction over here in this country. We don't feed ourselves well. We don't treat ourselves well. You understand what I'm saying? So
yeah, man. Fully get the picture. All right, we'll leave it there. No.
Well, wait, I had one more thing to say. I like that, I said I like that the president said that. And the other thing is that, the fact that he was so young also harps on something that I've talked about. We don't take care of our youth, right? We're not a nurturing culture whatsoever, because in a nurturing culture, he could have never have done that. He could never have gone to a church of all places.
Right.
And have done that, because he would have been grounded somewhere, either with a grandmother, with an aunt. He would have known that that's not the place to do that, or that was not the way to express. But these children, our youth, are screaming out.
Salient point. Very good point. I agree with that. Because I think that was one of the things some people were wondering. As a matter of fact, Mr. Lindsay and I were talking this again. We talk about that too. Also, being so young. And I heard the same statement being made on television that you'd probably tend to think is someone a little more up there in age that would do some of these things. But yeah, you're right. They're just not being, fed the right information and brought up, bent the right way. So you get these type of results.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's why I feel like learning styles, and it fits right into, like you said, I usually can tie in the discussion of the week with what's going on in the news. And that's only because, like I said, the universal laws are in effect.
Yes.
And they're in effect whether you listen to the news or not. And the only way to circumvent it or to avoid some of these mishaps is by knowing yourself. You have to know yourself.
Know yourself. Know yourself, mankind, know yourself. All right. We're going to go into learning styles. Listeners, EmpressTee sent me 17 charts. So when you speak, basically, there's a chart that I'm actually reeling through as a slideshow on the show, on the net. So if you're in the chat room, you can follow it. But for those who aren't able to see it, because I know a lot of people listening on the telephone or on TuneIn, we'll try to read as much of it so you can get a little picture as to what's going on. So with that, EmpressTee, higher frequency, take it away. It's at 10:43. We have to a little late start, but go ahead, Empress.
Okay, so what are learning styles and why are they important? A learning style basically is how we absorb, internalize, or just retain information about our surroundings or about our events or anything that we're going through. That's how we learn things, how we absorb, how we gather information. I guess starting from in the womb, we start learning, and studies have started to even show that we as the human species, we start learning the moment, I guess, our ears can hear, the moment our bodies can start feeling things. We are learning, we are absorbing information. And just because you can't read something doesn't mean that you can't understand something. So that with like little children, people say, oh, they don't understand, they're babies. But that doesn't mean that they can't understand. They probably can't read and they can't talk, but they can understand feelings. They have intuition. They have different venues for learning and for understanding, different ways.
Yeah, different senses, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that, it's important to know this as a parent, as a person, as a boss, as anything. It's important to know about these learning styles because it can help you rear your child better. If you as a parent know what type of learning style your child has, you can take your child from being a regular toddler to one of the mega toddlers. And by that, I mean by a reading toddler. I had a 3.5-year-old who was on a first, second grade reading level at 3.5. Wow. But that was because I knew what his learning style was, and I tried to supplement him in that. I would make available lots of information in his learning style because that's what was agreeable for him. And like as a boss, let's say you want to put together a dream team. If you know and you're up on learning styles and how people learn and retain information, you can put together a dream team because you'll have someone that, you know, that specializes in each of the learning senses, and thereby you'll have a more balanced group. You'll also even know how to train a person. You know, you find a lot of people in jobs and they're so unhappy, but it's because it's a job that doesn't go with their learning style, or it's because it's a job that they didn't get trained in properly because the person that trained them wasn't aware of how it is that they actually learn.
Right.
So it can be very, very empowering. And for me, it's empowering. It gives me confidence, and, you know, I can see how I can motivate people better. I can, you know, it's just empowering, you know, when you know.
All right. So I'm looking at this chart, the first chart that I have up, and it's color coded. So for the listeners, could you kind of walk through some of the components, some of the elements of it to get an idea how it ties in? Because it shows the word learning styles in the middle, and then they're branching off these different stuff in terms of writing, speech, words, verbal. You wanna touch on that a little?
Yeah, so they say that there's about 7 different learning styles, but we can probably break them down to 3 basic ones. There's visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. But now here on the chart that you're showing, we have the 7 learning styles. So that you have physical learning, verbal learning, oral learning, visual learning, logical learning, social learning, and solitary learning. Okay? And those are the styles. We're going to go through each one by one. Okay. The first one, go ahead. Did you have any questions, Rula?
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, the first one that I want to go through is visual. These learning styles are not in any order because everyone is unique and everyone is different. So that you can have 1 learning style, 2 learning styles. You can even have a combination of learning styles. But it's just to, like I said, it's just to be mindful that there are different types of learning styles. Okay? So with a visual learning style, that person best understands when they see things. They would more prefer images and maps, you know, graphic things. They're more visual. And even within the visual learners, you have global visual and analytical visual. So someone who is a global visual learner is someone who will look at something and see the picture first. Like if you have a picture and it has captions underneath, they'll be drawn to the picture first because they're visual. Right. Now, if they're analytical visual, they'll be drawn to the words first. Okay, so those people would excel more in arts and science. They make great graphic designers or detectives. As a matter of fact, as a detective, you could probably earn $68,000 a year. Oh. So that, you know, just by knowing what your strength is or what your superpower is, you can get to the right job and make the money that you deserve to make. You know, visual person is also pretty mechanical. They make $78,000 a year, you know, like a mechanical engineer. You know what I'm saying? Entrepreneurs, photographers, sculptors, painters. Those are the type of people that are visual. Okay. And they learn best by written instruction. So that, like, you know how in traditional classrooms, they have the children looking at the chalkboard. Well, back in the day, that was the only way that they taught. But now that we understand more that there are different ways of learning, people know that some kids are not going to learn anything. You could write on that board all day long. But if they're not a visual learner, you're not teaching them anything. So that's visual. Then the second one I wanted to talk about was auditory or aural. Some people call it aural. And those learners learn best through listening and speaking. So that those are people that remember what they hear or what they say more than what they see. And I guess you could say pretty much most of our listeners here, or most of the people who do radio, are mostly aural learners, auditory learners. because they're listening. They're the ones who are not listening and watching on the screen are just listening to my words, and they're retaining it that way. And someone who is an auditory learner can retain about 75% of what they hear at any given time just from listening to it. Those people also find it hard to sit in a quiet place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No,
so they need to constantly hear. Mm-hmm.
No, I was just thinking, the way you presented it up top about as we were born, when we're born, all these different ways of people develop their learning skills and so forth. I'm just thinking nowadays with the huge volume, huge volume of information flow, people accessing the internet, and we don't have time to sit down and read something that much. I think that's where the visual, the pictures, the optics, how you think that type of changing technology and the flow of information, the availability of information, that impacts some of the things you're talking about?
Oh, it definitely impacts it. As a matter of fact, one of the slides I have on there shows how generationally, like what I was saying about auditory, there was a generation, I would say my great-grandparents who listened to the radio. Remember before TV?
Right.
Before TV, families sat around together and they listened to the radio.
Yes, indeed. Mm-hmm.
And that was at that time, at that generation, so that they were almost grooming a generation of listeners.
1 second there. Is this the one? It's a green
Yes,
chart.
there it is, the green one.
Yeah.
How do and did they learn? I don't know if you can see it clearly.
Yeah, hold on. Let me see if I can increase the that's a very
the
good
clarity.
Yeah, let me see if I can bring
because yes, that is very important. Back then we didn't know so much, or I shouldn't say we didn't know so much, because
there it is.
I feel like back in time, back in the earlier generations, a lot of things were done naturally. Mm-hmm. That needed to be done. We didn't have to be instructed. No one had to tell you, talk to your child so this way they can learn to speak our language. No one had to tell you, read to your child so that they can learn the words, or you know what I'm saying? They didn't have to tell you how to be human. We kind of were more instinctively human. You know what I'm saying?
Indeed.
So that now we have to more tell everybody, do this, do this, do this. Mm-hmm. You can see here, I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, let me just, because I can read it here. The way the chart is written, they break it down into different, groups. They have at the top left, veterans, baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials. And then there are other components on it, which I can't read. Veterans, they talk about in the classrooms, baby boomers, the lecture and workshops and books, and Gen Xers is hands-on. Kids learning is supposed to be fun, role playing and so forth. The writings are hard to read, but yeah, it's interesting. I didn't even realize that chart is here, because clearly, nowadays we're getting so much flow of information. We don't have time to sit down and people just look on a picture and move on, and then they come away with the wrong information.
Yeah, but not really. And see, that's where you have to know your learning style, because everybody can't look at that same picture and internalize it the same way.
Absolutely.
So that's why it is important to, especially now, because we have such an overwhelming onslaught of information available, such an availability, so much easy access. It's very important to know what your learning style is, so that you know and you don't waste time, because if you're an oral learner, you don't need to be reading books all the time or listening, you know what I'm saying, or watching movies. You need to focus on how you learn quicker. Now, that's not to say that you can't improve on a learning style or add on to your learning style, which makes you a more rounded person. But everyone naturally, instinctively has their own strongest, or should I say, preferential learning style.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So yeah, we were doing aural. So, anyone with an auditory learning style is going to find themselves or should find themselves in the music industry or a vocalist or even a translator. Something where there's a lot of verbal exchange going on. Those are the types of jobs that you would want to be in. I know that there's a lot of people that are unhappy because they just choose a job to make money. But like I said, if you know a little more about yourself, you can choose a job. You can make the most money. You can maximize how much money you're going to make because your productivity is going to increase because you're going to enjoy what you're doing. You're going to absorb what you're doing. You're going to excel at what you're doing. So sometimes we just need to, like I said, know who we are. So now the next one I want to go through is the kinesthetic. A kinesthetic learner learns by doing. Now, it's different from a hands-on doing in that they need more movement. They need their whole body engaged so that it's not just hands-on, because we do have a hands-on, and that's a more tactical learner. But there's the kinesthetic learner that learns by involving their whole entire body as much as possible. So like those are the people that respond to touch. I remember the hypnotist on Tuesday with Chief Anthony. His name escapes me right now, Rula. Only because I read it, I didn't say it.
Dr. Brooks.
Yes, Dr. Brooks. He gave an example about how when you touch someone, it leaves a deeper impression, a lasting impression. That's for those people that respond to that. You know what I'm saying? So those are people that enjoy using tools. Those are people that you can show them to do something one time and they'll grasp it because they have excellent motor memories. And those are the kind of, like, if you wanted to know, well, is my child a kinesthetic learner? That's the child that's not sitting still. That's the child that's jumping up and down when you're at the zoo saying, oh my God, I see the animals, while everyone else is sitting still. You might have a couple of kids that'll point. You'll have some that are just listening. You'll have some that are saying it's too stinky, but you'll always have that one or two child that's jumping up and down. Those are kinesthetic learners. And even with people, adults, if you're in a group, let's say you have a family or group or any group, you can always tell what a person's learning, well, you can usually tell a person's learning style by their body language. The kinesthetic learner is not going to be sitting still. They can't.
Yeah.
They can't. They're going to fidget. Those are the fidgeters. You know what I'm saying? Those are the ones who snack when they study, snack when they eat. They have to do stuff. They have to constantly be doing stuff. And, like, really, if you know that you're a kinesthetic person and you're trying to learn something that's written down, they say the best thing for you to do is rewrite it.
Oh, wow. It's amazing you said that. The other day, I interviewed Imla Edwards. Right, and that's one of the things he pointed out. That's the way how he remembers things. Write it on several different paper. And I was talking to SWA the other day, and she said when she was in school, that's what she used to do. And for me, I did not do that. But when I heard Emily say that and speaking to SWA, I said, something that makes a lot of sense.
But now here's the thing about that too, because there's two things that go with that. Because there are people who will write it. Now, the kinesthetic person will write it, but they're not going to look at it. They're never going to go back and look at those notes because they're a movement person. So what that did was it just satisfied their need to move. So they retained it because they were moving. Their hands were moving as they were doing it, not because they're note people. They're not visual.
Interesting.
You understand? So there's an employing of two different learning styles there.
Hold your thought there. It's 11 o'clock, folks. I can't believe the time has run out. Well, we start a bit late, so you know how it is when we're here. We're going on till 11:30 this morning, and
you are listening to RBN Rule Grounds Network.
Yes, folks, it's 11 o'clock, and you know if it's Friday and it's 10:30, we just deal with stuff at a higher frequency. We're not doing a low frequency stuff, high frequency.
Exactly. It's enough
Yeah.
low level living going on. We got to try and pull some people back up or
Yeah,
push
man.
them up, whatever it is, invite them up. That's the thing. Because if you don't want to be on a higher level, I don't want you up here.
Yeah, tickle your brains and make you think and trying to understand all what's happening. Okay, something comes to mind, and I don't know if you can answer this because it's and I don't know how it falls. It's just that when you were talking about learning, the word idiot savants, you know who those are, right? Idiot savants.
What did you said? The word idiot savant?
Yeah, am I
I
pronouncing it
have
correctly?
no idea, but I think idio has to do with language. The word idio, right?
Yeah, there are these folks that are kids or whatever people that they seem to have a different behavioral responses when you're around them, but you would tend to think them fool. They don't have any sense. But these persons, these individuals, are some of the most brilliant people. I've seen instances, for example, where this one kid, I think, I don't know if showed him a picture or flew him over New York City, and he was able later to sit down and reproduce a drawing of New York City. They can remember anything. You can
Yes.
you can go back to 1325 and say which date is a particular date, and they can tell you. So I was just wondering if you know anything about that, because I'm always amazed. Go ahead.
Yeah, those are people that have like superpowers. They have really, really tapped into their learning styles and employ and use them on a completely higher level. That's it exactly. That's all of it exactly. Like what you said, that there are some kids that they can look at something and absorb it. A lot of times they say that autistic kids are like that.
Right.
Because they physically, they're not able to join us the way that we do. They don't have the same physical control, but on a mental level, it's completely different. But they emotionally and physically retain and absorb information differently that makes it, a little weird and makes it a little unbalanced. But on an intellectual level, intelligence-wise, they are way, way, way up there. I don't know enough. I can get some more information about it, but I just know that that's exactly what this is about, the learning styles. Those are people that have extra sharp learning styles particular. You have some children that are 2-3 years old that can hear a piano concerto, and they'll go never play the piano before.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking
about. And can go and play that concerto.
Exactly. That's exactly. I'm always amazed, with those folks, and But that I would be curious one day. Maybe we can cover that though. But yeah, that's something that's deep stuff.
Yeah, and again, like I said, that also is something that, as a parent, as an educator, or even just just being people, if you know someone's learning style, you can propel them from one spot to a higher level completely just by that. Like, so now that child that can do math and things like that, they're going to find themselves in a great position when they're older, because they can do any type of job, because they can retain and remember any information. They can work in computers if they're able to sit still long enough, because I don't know what all the combination of styles are, but those are, people that can go really far, because it's like a superpower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, didn't mean to digress much.
Let me finish with kinesthetic.
Yeah.
So, like, a kinesthetic person is someone that is not a desk person. You wouldn't want them working a desk job. You wouldn't want them in a classroom where they have to sit for long periods of time, or without taking a break. If you find that you are a kinesthetic person, you may find that you take frequent breaks, or that you're constantly stretching or moving, or, have to get up and change your position or do something else, refocus. That's because you're a kinesthetic person. Mm-hmm. And those people are good for professional sports, physical therapists, mechanics, construction workers, most of the trade professions, dancers, actors, anything where you don't have to be still.
All right, just give me a second there. Let me just welcome some folks in the chat room. Inbox Media Group, Mr. Patrick, also Lady Song from Netlime down there in Florida, hanging out with us in the chat room. Lightbrock, I want to say big up to SWA. A whole bunch of other people that are there in both of the chat rooms. So, once a welcome to each of you. You're listening to the one and only EmpressTee, Higher Frequency. There are an awful lot of people in the Ustream chat room that are tuning in. And let me explain there again. What happens is when I post this stuff up over at Facebook, for some reason, Ustream embeds their code into the thing. So when you click on it, you ended up on Ustream. So you don't get to see in the Rule About Network chat room. And I've disabled the chat room over in Ustream. But we welcome you. You're there. I know you're seeing the charts because once you're over at Ustream, you automatically will see those. So go ahead, Empress. I'm not sure which one of these are the charts you want me to go to.
You can just keep scrolling through, Ruler. That's just for my visual people.
Right.
I don't want to leave them out, So I try to give a little something for everyone.
I understand.
As much as possible.
All right. Well, continue, because I see one here that I want to probably you to address later on when you finish. It talks about the left brain and the right brain and the importance between the minds or something like that.
Okay. All right. Now, the other ones that I want to go through are logical. Logical learning styles are people that look at numbers and see sequences and patterns. I can't do it. I'm not a logical person. I can see patterns.
Mathematical and geometrical inclined person, correct?
Yes. That's a logical person that does both. I can do the patterns, but numbers, just, I don't know. They just freak me out. But I have a daughter. My daughter is like that. She was counting and dividing and doing things by the time she was 3.
Wow.
And, it was, when I noticed it, it was funny how I noticed it. I've always done childcare. I said that. And one time we were doing snacks, and she was always my helper. And I was telling her, give these over here. They're cookies. And it was 3 kids, and I was like, give everybody like 2 cookies over here, the ones that finished. And so she was like, six cookies. So I'm like, not 6. I'm getting ready to yell at her, not 6. I said 2. But what she had done was she totaled it. She totaled it.
No, let me ask you, did that child of yours eventually, because based on what you're telling me, and you're right, because for me, it was the same thing when I was a little bit, even though I started to read late when I was only 7. But for some reason, I started to migrate to numbers. I was quick with numbers. I was good with numbers. And I ended up being an engineer. So I guess that's what I wanted to ask you. If a child like that would tend to, if she would have gone to college, that's the type of field she would go into, or computer science or something.
Yes, definitely. That, and also you've got a little bit of visual in there too, because to be an engineer, you've got to look. It's a visual
a lot of drawings
aspect too. But yes, that's definitely it. Accounting, anything that has to do with numbers, mathematics, science, detective, law, computer programming. Those people have a systematic way of thinking. They think in patterns, so that you could never go to a logical person and say, oh my gosh, I'm going to Florida, but I'm going to go to California, and then I'm going to go to Mexico. And, because that person is saying, wait a minute, that's not in a direct line.
Right.
They're not going to understand what is the logic of, I'm going to Florida, but I'm going to go to California, New Mexico, Nevada, because they're like, wait a minute, that's all over the place. They like to see things in order.
Yeah,
so
logical.
That if you say you're going to go to Florida, they want to see you go straight to Florida.
Yeah, I understand, man. Yeah, man, that makes sense, because I mean that. Yeah, man.
So that's logical. Logical, or sometimes people call it mathematical. And that's a little different than, the other one that does the visual, where it's visual, in that it's more with numbers. They can do word puzzles. What is the thing? The Sudoku. Those are the Sudoku people. The the Rubik's cubes. Those are those people. They can figure out, those kind of puzzles. And they probably would be good at picking lottery numbers. I wouldn't be surprised if they came up with some little system or, looked at the numbers the way that they go. Maybe we can get one of those kids. What did you say? The Indio savants?
Yeah. Yeah, I have to check the correct spelling and pronunciation, but I've seen those stories on 60 Minutes, and I've always sat there and said, huh? Yeah,
yeah, like that movie Rain Man. I don't know if you remember the movie Rain Man.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember with Tom Cruise and I can't remember the other guy right now, but it was his brother, his older brother, and he was autistic, but he was a logical thinker, so he could do numbers, and he took them with him into the casinos, and they were making a killing because he had him counting the cards. So he was winning off of his brother's learning.
SWA says Dustin Hoffman. She sees every
there you go.
She sees every movie. She sees, on Pick Your Brains, we need to have a category about movies. She probably would win that hands down. Let me welcome the big man, Clifton Edwards from 25th Century in the chat room. And folks, you're listening to EmpressTee at HigherFrequency. It's 11:11 on 6/19/2015. Continue, Empress.
Okay. And then we have verbal learners. And those are the people that gravitate, they learn best by written and spoken word. And those people are best in a traditional classroom because they can sit in front of a large board all day and, they're mesmerized by what you put up there and what you say and what you explain about the words. That's how they learn. Those are like the journalists, the professional writers, the public speakers, our politicians. Those are all verbal learners. And as you can see, a lot of them cross over, you know what I'm saying? So that when some people say, there's 7 learning styles, there's really 3 basic ones. Mm-hmm. And then you have some that you can branch off, and make them into more. There's where, like I said, with the kinesthetic, you have the tactile kinesthetic learners. And then you also have the tactile ones that do more hands-on, and then you have the kinesthetic who do the movement. So there's where it's almost the same, but a little differently. A tactile is more someone who puts things together. Those are more like the engineers, I would say. They're good at putting things together. They can build puzzles. They can build proposals. They can build lesson plans, things like that. Those are people that build. Then finally we have solitary and social learning skills. Now, basically, what that just tells you is that how you like to learn. Some people like to learn by themselves. They don't like big classrooms. They prefer to be in a room by themselves. Those are people that are right now would be good for online school. They would excel. If you want to learn anything and you find that you're someone that likes to be by yourself, pick up an online class or two. Those are people like security officers, anyone who's self-employed, writers, researchers, park rangers, things like that. Those are people that most likely will analyze something before they speak. They're not the chattering type. They don't like a lot of noise and a lot of confusion. They just want, everything to be very brief, very basic, and quiet.
To the point. And on the chart here, I'm showing interpersonal, which are people smart, and
that would be solitary. You would say intra.
Yeah.
The self-smart. That's more like a solitary learning style.
Okay.
And then you have social, which is the inter. And an interpersonal person or a social learner is someone who loves a big classroom, who loves the discussion. They like group discussion. They get off on that. They like brainstorming and solving together. Those are people that would do good as a coach or as a teacher or in human resources, counseling, advertising. Those are people that operate off of their feelings and the intuition. They vibe off the group, put it that way.
Yeah, and that's why probably sometimes if you're in a group discussion, say with 10 people, and there's a vibrant discussion going on about whatever the subject matter is, you may find 1, 2, or 3 of those persons generally are there observing, not really the pusher in the group, because they have a probably different mode of wanting to learn and participate, I guess.
Exactly, because your learning style also dictates your living style.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like you said, if you're not a kinesthetic learner, if you're not a movement person, or if you're not that social one and you find yourself in that group setting, you're going to feel off balance. So you are going to do what you know to do, and that's to stick to yourself and to observe or retain as much of the information that you can, because you know, depending on what other learning styles you have, you may not hear, or you might need an agenda. Like, I'm a visual person too. As much as I'm an oral person, I'm very visual. So that if I go to a meeting, if you tell me come to a meeting, you better have an agenda for me.
Oh yeah, I mean every
I
meeting.
need to have something written down. I want to see something too.
Yeah, I mean, you know, on my Palace board meeting, right? We normally, I usually send out the agenda 2 days in advance, and if there are supporting documents that we need to discuss, I send it out in advance because you know,
And that's important for those visual people. Now, there's some people that are like, what do I need this agenda for? I don't need this, but that's because they don't learn that way. They don't interpretate information that way.
Right.
They don't need that. You know what I'm saying? They're there to hear what you're talking about and to do whatever it is that you're about to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, man, quite interesting.
So, and then we have also reading and writing. That's a little bit like visual and oral, because, you know, there are some people who learn best, like you were saying, Yamala Edwards. Those are your note takers. Those are the ones that learn best through words. They take notes, they read, and can retain anything that they read.
Yeah.
You can present them with the most abstract concept, and they can put it into layman's terms for the regular person, because they understand it like that. Now, my son Alexis, he is that way. He is an avid reader. Alexis can read a textbook in the morning and can take a test in the subject later on that afternoon whenever he finishes the book, and more chances than not, he will score in the high 90s, if not a perfect 100.
Right.
That's just, you know, I don't know how he's able to do it, but he's able to do it. And once I noticed it, I brought it to his attention, and I think that he uses that. He reads everything. He's a reader.
Yeah, and you know, it's good. I always admire people. They just read the stuff and retain it on the instant. But what do you say about those persons then who read the stuff, but they're not retaining it? They're just reading it for reading its sake. Is that something that's lacking in them?
What it is they probably have another learning style too. So like for those people who are reading but not retaining it, maybe they need to snack as they're reading it, or maybe they need to write what they're reading, re-outline it so that they incorporate more of their body, so that they incorporate more of their preferred learning styles with it. Maybe they need to speak it out. Sometimes if you do like a study group, I know that like in college and in high school, for me, when I first really learned about my learning styles was in high school. I had a teacher, I went to boarding school, so my teacher was also my advisor. And history and all that stuff like that, world knowledge, world history was always my forte. I love world history. And so in class, I knew everything. But when it came to the test, it was like I knew nothing. And because she was my advisor, she said, there's something wrong here. She said, in my class, you know this stuff. Sometimes you bring information to me.
Right.
But when you get to the test, it doesn't show. It's not reflecting. So what she did was she began to incorporate my learning styles with her test giving, so that I was given an oral exam. And I aced it because that was my forte. I could talk. I could speak. I needed that discussion, that exchange.
But wait a minute. You're saying she gave you oral exams, whereas the other kids took the written exams?
Exactly. My final exam, like during the school year, I still had to take the regular test. But for my final, because she knew, she was my advisor, and she knew that I knew the work. And it was, I went to a boarding school, so we were afforded those types of privileges, if I may.
Okay.
But it was important, and I think that it helped me because it empowered me to do well, because what was happening is just like you said, I would take this test, I would fail, and it does something to your self-esteem. I didn't know that I wasn't a visual learner at that time. I didn't know. You understand what I'm saying? I didn't understand. All I knew is that I failed the test. My mom was going to yell. It was going to be a problem.
Right. No, I was just thinking, you figure if they're going to take the test, everybody has to take the same type of test. The fact that, she was able to filter you out and said, okay, you take the oral test. I found that kind of different. But hey,
yes, and not just her, because it was a small school, like I said, she was able to talk to some of my other teachers and ask them as my advisor, do you find that in the classroom, she's doing work one way, but then when it comes to a test, it's something else? And some of the other teachers were like, yeah, it's true. And they also gave me oral exams. Now, the ones that didn't were the math teacher. My math teacher said he didn't care.
Yeah. It's interesting you're mentioning all of that, because I'm just reflecting on me when I was in high school at Excelsior. No, I was a person that it was strictly math, physics, chemistry, biology, maths. Those were my strengths. But you see, if it was to come to history and Bible knowledge and them little thing there and English literature, no, sir, me not. And me usually ace my maths test. And even when I was in university, for 4 years, I went to university up in engineering school up in Boston. The lowest I've ever gotten is 90 on a math test. Always 100. And I don't even have to study. So what you're saying here makes a lot of sense. Now it's coming to me.
And see, so what happens now with the schooling, what happens now with the schooling is that teachers who are up on it, who are really into teaching, because there's some people who are just into teaching for the paycheck, but teachers who are really into teaching know these things about their children and about their students, should I say, and take extra, I don't want to say precaution, but take extra measures to make sure that they address all the learning styles.
Now, let me ask you this. You're working with young kids now, toddlers. I don't know if toddler is a real word, but kids from, say, 1 year up to 5 years. Now, as you see this individual students there that you're working with at your business, how do you do that? How do you coach that? How do you relate it to the respective parent to say, hey, I notice your child is strong in this area or weak in this area? Do you do that?
Exactly that. I do that. One thing about doing childcare and teaching and educating, parents always want to hear about their children, okay?
Right.
I haven't met a parent yet that doesn't want to hear about their child.
What?
And if you understand about learning styles and things like that, you almost can never have a negative report for a parent. And that's the kind of educator I want and need. I put my 3.5-year-old in preschool, and instead of, on his second day, he said he hated it. And instead of the teacher saying to me, oh, my goodness, I love your child, he is so advanced, I had him doing this, I had him doing that, instead of seeing him as a breath of fresh air, she saw him as a hindrance. She said she didn't know what to do for him.
Wow.
And so he sat in the class and did nothing. And I would ask him, what did you do? He said, I did nothing. I had to just wait for you to come. I said, well, could you get on the computer? Because I'm telling you, at 3, he couldn't write, but he knew the letters, so he could press the buttons on the keyboard. He used to get on the computer at home. I said, well, did they let you get on the computer? He said, no. She told me, no, I had to just wait for my mother to come. And I was furious.
Wow.
I was furious. You as an educator, you can't do something with this child? What are you telling me? So me, as an educator and as a child care provider, I rarely give a negative report because I understand how children learn. And I watch them. I observe them. I have some children that like the TV. I'm sorry. They like the TV all day. So what I do is I make sure that what they're watching is content that they need to be knowing. So if they're a visual learner, in the background, the TV may be on all day, but it's playing ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, color, shapes, and things like that, visual for them. And it also satisfies the children who are oral learners because it's talking, it's doing songs, it has, you know what I'm saying? So I take care of my visual and my oral learners right there with the TV in the background. But then I have, for my tactile and my kinesthetic learners, I have learning centers that are set up. And basically what a learning center is just an area of the house where they can go and play. And when you know that there are different learning styles, they learn through play. There's nothing that you can do and not learn something from it. Even me as an adult, I learn something new every day, if not 2 or 3 or 4 things new.
Wow.
So with the tactile learners, they're running around. They may be in the kitchen area playing and cooking, you know, pretend housekeeping, whatever it is that they're doing, but they're learning social skills. They're listening to the ABCs in the background, so that's being fed in their brain, but they're learning in their way, which is tactical or kinesthetic, so that they're moving, they're allowed to move freely from learning center to learning center, so that I don't restrict them and say, you've got to stay here from 9 to 10, from 10 to 11, we're going to do this. However, I do have sections of time where I sit down and say, hey, everyone, let's listen to a story. And then what I do is I encourage everyone to go pick their own book.
Right.
And then this way I wrote even the tactical learners, the ones who have to do hands-on or kinesthetic, they might not be into the book, but they're into the going to get the book. You understand? So that I try to employ all the different forms. But again, that's only because I'm aware of them and know them. And what I wanted to say about, you know, the personal story that I was telling you about with high school, so that, you know, I finished well, the teacher helped me, but I also, because I didn't improve on the other skills, I felt confident with, I could just take an oral exam and that's it. So when you say to me, well, what about all the other students? Well, when I got in college, I became, again, all the other students. You know, I made the suggestion to my teacher, and she was like, okay, that might be in high school, but we're in college, and this is the test, and it's either you take it or you don't.
Right.
And so I had to figure out ways that I can retain this information. So being that I knew that I was an oral learner and a more verbal person, I would do study tactics with my friends. We would do flashcards, and they would ask me the questions, or I would ask them the questions, and they would say the answers, so that it was written down visually, but it satisfied my oral learning style.
Right. Good point.
You see? So, and you know, so when you say to me with my group of kids, yes, I'm on it. I try to employ as many of the learning styles, because sometimes you don't even know what a child's learning style is, and it can also change.
You know, SAA who runs a business just like you, childcare education. She has a master's degree in that field. She made a point here that if public schools taught learning styles, students would never fail. And that's probably a true statement. But the thing is, like you said earlier, several of these teachers, they're not in it for really uplift the kids. They're just in it for money. I tell you something. I volunteered teaching 5 years, maths and physics and chemistry at Asbury Park High School. It's 90.
I know where the Asbury Park is.
Oh, you know it is. Yeah, man. Bruce Springsteen, as a matter of fact, about half a mile from in Jersey, from Bruce Springsteen. And I tell you, Empress, the populace was about 99% minority kids, black kids, and so forth. But would you believe when I got there, they gave me about 12 students, which are students that had challenges in learning and so forth. Would you believe when I was leaving that program? And the reason why I left is because one of the students had got like a 27% in one of the math tests. And the supervisor is telling me, boy, you know, I can't report that as his grade. I have to give him 51. I say, hell no. Me not do that. Me not gonna lie. I'm not gonna be helping that child by saying he got 51 when he got 27, just because the school wanted to make sure they get their funding from the Whitney. But there were teachers there, them never give a hoot. And for myself, you know, some of these students could not believe that I don't have any experience in teaching or degree in that field. But the thing is, the passion, I really sat down and cared
Exactly.
and honed in on each of those students. There was one student I can never forget. The first day in a math, I went to introduce myself and was going around for each of them to introduce themselves. And this one young lady, she sat in the back of the class, and I said, "No, it's your term." Like I went to 7 and she was number 8, and I said, "No, it's your term. Can you introduce yourself?" She looked at me and she stayed, and she never said one single word. After about a minute, I'm trying to get her attention to say something. We have a call coming in. Gonna add the caller and then pick up that call. Caller, hold for a second. Let me just finish this point here. And then you know what happened? I just ignored her, moved to the other person, and finished the other two. Would you believe the next day, she came to me after the class and said, "Sir, I am a slow learner. People never teach me anything, but there is something, you are delivering. I could see the connection." And I was floored because, like I say, I didn't know this girl. Would you believe 2-3 weeks later, this young lady was coming up to me and asked could I give her extra subjects, extra problems to solve. No, she started to get really and truly involved, wanting to learn. And the thing is, before, teachers didn't give a hoot. Just like SW is saying, so she's right.
Yes, exactly. And see what she was a logical learner because the math and numbers spoke to her.
All right. It's
you know what I'm saying? The numbers spoke to her. And that's the fault that I have with the education system here. I was very blessed in that I went to private schools. When I was younger, I went to a private community school. It wasn't like an elite private school. It was a group of parents who wanted the best for their children. And we mirrored a lot of the Montessori philosophy of thinking, which is more about free learning, where, like I say, I have my learning centers and the kids are free as long as they don't make a big mess. And even they can make a mess because that's part of learning because they have to learn to clean up. So that as long as they're not leaving messes, I'm good with it. You can do whatever you want here. I want you to have fun because I know that if you're having fun, you're learning.
All right. I don't mean to cut you up because you're running all the time because we started late. But we have a caller on the line. Caller, can you identify yourself and want to chime in?
Come on.
Yeah. Mr. Yeah.
It's Mr. Yaya.
Patrick, we're going to have to start co-hosting together.
I know, right?
Are your new name that, man? Mr. Yeah. Patrick from Inbox.
Mr. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, talk to us now. What are you hearing and what you want to add to what's going on? Patrick?
Hello?
Patrick. Oh, Patrick must get.
I think we lost him with the yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're hearing you now. I was asking.
Okay.
We have a few minutes. We want to wrap it up. But the thing is, what have you heard that you like to add to our takeaway in terms of the discussion? Go ahead.
I'm going to be quick. So you have blacks. You have one figure.
Your signal is bad.
One figure.
Yeah, we cannot hear you very well.
Yeah, your signal is chipping in and out. I don't know if you want to call back or if you sound like you're losing bandwidth.
I'll call you back.
You're good there now. Oh, he dropped off. All right, go ahead.
But yeah, I think, my problem with the education system is exactly that. You have people there that just want a paycheck, particularly in the New York Board of Education. Not so much now because most of the older generation of teachers have retired finally, thank God. But for a while, you had a core group of teachers that were predominantly Jewish, predominantly older white women that were teaching our children. They didn't give a rat's behind whether they learned or not.
Yeah, welcome back, Mr. Yaya. Welcome back, Mr. Yaya. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
And as a matter of fact, the smarter you were, the more they kept you down because they wanted you quiet. That was the way of keeping them quiet. So I have big issue with the education system. And when I see these kids acting out, I'm not surprised. I don't sit here and say, oh, my God. I'm like, yeah, that's right. That's what you get because that's what you taught them.
All right. Go ahead. Patrick, go ahead because we're running out of time.
I know we're running out of time, right?
Yeah.
So basically it's called chattel teaching, all right? And
what is it called?
Teaching,
what is it?
Chattel. It's like chattel. teaching. So it's like,
Okay.
you go to the bank, you go through the bank line. It's a cookie cutter teaching method. One style fits all. You put 20 kids in a classroom that have, no one child is the same. No one child learns the same. And you now expect them to understand what's going on. First and foremost, there's informational learning and there's instinctive learning. And this school system is geared upon information learning. So informational learning is you stand at the board, I give you directions and you follow. Not all our kids follow and learn in that method.
Exactly.
You understand? So because of that, you put 25 kids in a room, the return is going to be minimal at best because these kids cannot follow that type of pattern of learning. So when
not all of them.
Not all of them, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. You end up getting not the best of us. You end up getting the marginal of us. You understand?
Right.
Because
and if I could just cut in one moment, Patrick, and say this, and then when you couple that type of learning with the uniforms that they're now using, what you're doing is you're breeding a generation of jail people, of workers, because when you look at like private school uniforms, they're uniforms. They have a blazer. They're like business attire. It's business attire for many children. But for the public school system, and I had big issue, I did not allow my son to wear the uniforms. In fact, I took my kids out of the school. I understand they used the uniforms because they wanted to cut down on theft of clothing and, the competition with this name brand, that name brand, and so that the focus was on the education. But the uniforms that they're using and the type of, like Patrick said, their style of teaching with the bell system and all of these things are just training our children to be institutionalized. These children leave the public schools and go directly to jail. The uniforms change just a little bit in color, but we've got them in the uniforms. We've already prepared them for that.
Exactly. Not only that, but the system also, when especially here in New York City, you're already going through a metal detector just to get into the school.
Yes.
The school is geared towards, if you look at the design of the school, is no different from the design of your common prison, with the bars on the gates, on the windows, and the securities that's walking around with, in uniform with a gun. So it's mentally conditioning the child to simulate to prison life.
Exactly. So it has nothing to do with education.
They build more prisons in this country than they do education, than they do
anywhere.
schools.
Anywhere. And so that goes back to what I was saying about what Obama said, that, there are things that occur here that don't occur other places. But that's because our focus here is money. Yeah. It's not people. Everywhere else in any other country, the focus is not money.
All right, I tell you what. I think the last part of this discussion is probably for another show, which I'm sure. Which I'm sure between both of you guys, we're going to be able to address that down the road. All right, let me do this.
Go ahead, Blue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me do this. We only have 2-3 more minutes at best.
I'm out.
No. Don't go there, Patrick. I wanted for you to present last statement, whatever it is, the last, and then we let Empress wrap it up. So, Patrick, with what you've heard and going forward, anything you'd like to add or take away? I know you've added something already, but just for the last moment of you being here, go ahead.
All right, so we need to have our own school system that caters to how our kids learn individually. Because they absorb and retain information differently. So if we keep putting them in the same system, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. And not only that, when we grew up, we had enough wherewithal when our parents passed down what they knew to us. Today, we having kids not able to pass nothing down to the next generation to come.
Absolutely.
So now just look at what we're going, if you think, last week, a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about, the old man in St. Elizabeth getting shot. Just look at now what it is that we're breathing going forward that is going to be permeating the society going forward, because we have nothing that we are passing on. And with that, IMG is out. Have a good one.
Blessed love, and thank you so much for the input as always. All right, Empress, gonna give you 2 minutes to wrap it up. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So again, learning styles are important to know. It's important to know your children's learning style. Important to know your learning style, and just to be aware of it. You know, like I said, when I present these segments, it's to empower us as people, as part of the society. In addition to what Patrick was saying, that we need to teach our children this, that, and the other. Really, what we need to do is teach our teachers. In Finland, they have the best. Like, if I could pick some place to go, I would go there for the education system alone. They teach their teachers to teach. And by that, I mean that they train these people. There are no teachers with anything less than a master's. And they teach the teachers to teach the children to be lifelong learners. And so with that, there's not a set curriculum, because you can learn from anything, and so once you take that into account, there's where you get into the business of teaching, and not even teaching. It's called really exchanging information, because no one here is inventing the wheel. We're just more or less sharing the blueprint. But we need to understand that each and every one of us has a different way in which we retain and absorb those blueprints. And so that was really it.
All right, well, let me say, first of all, thank you so much for a very important topic. I'm sure some of the listeners out there must have picked up something, whether for us as adults or information that they can pass on to their kids, or things to look out for in their kids in terms of steering them. Just like we talked about, see what their strengths are and then steer them in that direction.
And if I could just say one more thing too, Rula, and also don't be afraid to say to your teachers, to your children's teachers, because I've had to do it many times. Well, I know my child is a visual learner. Well, I know my child is a hands-on learner. If you can somehow incorporate, or, can you give me something? Is there something that I can do at home to help them with their strengths? Sometimes the teacher didn't even take a moment to know and doesn't even know about it. So if you bring it to their attention, you're only making them a better teacher as well.
Indeed, indeed. And let me say big up to 25th Century, Mr. Clifton Edwards, EmpressTee, Linebacker, Servant David. Welcome, Servant David. You're finally getting the chat room after all of these trying. SW the J. Lady Song, the big bad lady out there in a net line, radio down there in Florida. All the guests, a myriad of guests, a ton load of guests on both of the chat rooms. Sir, I'm not going to be able to go through all the names, but again, I want to thank Patrick for calling in and adding to the dialogue, and also to EmpressTee. Again, if it's a Friday, it's a thing we call higher frequency. Thank you so much, Empress.
You